welcome to our event just around the corner.
Well, thank you very much for this very challenging, very important question. In fact, I'm kind of divided in how to respond to that. Yes, implementation is important, but at the same time, I see that, and actually that I very much agree with you that continuously doing what we have been doing will not suffice. I mean, and also I think that we need a transformational change to get there. To me, the question is how to get there. And that's why I kind of emphasized in my 5 minutes presentation that what are the innovative mechanisms to get there. And well, some mechanisms need a global environmental agreement, but some we do not have to. So while we are striving for this global environmental agreement, still we can do a lot among local coalitions. Local is not necessarily local government, but then like-minded donors and like-minded CSOs and like-minded business sector and the community. And that's something that I would like to see more and more actually the effort and to be put in place. And another area I want to emphasize one more time is that while I think that we more or less know what works and what doesn't work, still it needs a lot of effort to kind of clarify that which one has the most sustainable impact on the ground and which one can be scaled up. Because what we need is actually the magnitude and scale. And that's something currently it's a bit of vague in my own understanding. So going forward, I not only we want to pass these innovative ideas, but also where we get the resources to have a sustainable impact on the ground and how to do this, the knowledge management more effectively. That's something I'd like to emphasize.
No, I think that she's right. We need to learn how to do better, and this is not only the GEF, but the partnership as a whole. There's always room for improvement. But one of the things that we think we demonstrated with 20 years of experience with GEF, and by the way, we have this book here that was launched at Bio Plus 20 that describes what the GEF has done. So actually, it's worth reading. It's not a picture book. It was written to be read. But what we concluded is that since we have this 20 years of experience and we know what works, what doesn't work, and looking at, for example, the Aichi targets, I think there is a reasonable chance that we may achieve the targets if, number one, we have resources that are commensurate to the challenge that we saw in Russ's presentation, and that we work effective, as Naoka would say, with a strengthened coalition. So partnership is one thing, but the coalition is even broader than what we have at the moment. And the beauty of working, for example, with the CBD and with the agencies and the GEF is that we have priorities that are expressed in financial terms. Big countries need more money, and smaller countries proportionally less. Some countries have bigger biodiversity challenges and so forth. But in the GEF world, every country has a pocket of money. Every country has money for during 4 years to help them meet the obligations before the CBD. So in that sense, I think that we can do if we all mobilize it. And here we have actually a great audience today because we have the director of, we have heard from Kathy McKinnon, who had the biodiversity portfolio of the bank for many years. We have Nick Severin here, who is the director of biodiversity investment for UNDP, the two agencies that actually had the most influence in producing these results in protected areas. We have Jonathan Bailey here that's doing a lot of the, let's say, the species which were forgotten in the beginning, now they're coming back because, again, we need to do both. We need to do ecosystem services. We need to prevent habitats from being degraded and reduced in size, but we also need to address the biodiversity crisis on the other end. And thanks actually to Brazil, when Rod was at the CBD, we managed to introduce language that guided the GEF to also actually increase representation of threatened species in protected area systems. We have people working on the ground like Claudio Plano in Brazil with a partnership and training the new generation. But anyways, I can keep talking about everybody who's here, but I would like to actually to ask and put that person on the spot, who's Alberto Pagnaro right there, who has one of the most successful trust funds that the GEF has financed actually in Peru. And if you can reflect on this experience and what we can do more and what is the next generation of trust funds that we need to work, Alberto, if you can comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gustavo, for this opportunity. And on this issue, it's a great pleasure to meet you tonight. It's a really great honor as well. Well, I represent Profonampe, the Peruvian Trust Fund for National Parks. And we must be certainly one of the oldest GEF partners, because Profonampe was born in 1991 as a project, and it became an institution in 1992. We are celebrating our 20 years this November. And since then, we have already administered around 70% of all the financial resources allocated at GEF for biodiversity in Peru. So we are a very important partner in Peru. And as well, the environmental conservation trust funds in Latin America. I take part of a network which gathers around 24 environmental funds, which is called REDLAC, the Latin American and Caribbean Network of Environmental Funds. And most of them have received the contribution from the GEF, and I guess that most of the success that we know in Latin America, particularly in Brazil, in Rio, in Mexico, the Mexican Fund, and Profonampe itself, well, we owe to GEF very much for our development. Today, our portfolio, which began with the first grant from the GEF of $5 million, today we have accumulated $130 million. And we are able to fund programs and projects in protected areas in Peru for around $10 million from now on for the next decade. So, having said that, I have a very specific question. Environmental funds in Latin America can keep expectations to see a second round of call for applications to become national implementing agencies and GEF national implementing agencies, and that's my question, because Profonampe, in our case, we would like to be at least submitting an application for this important partnership with the GEF. Thank you.
Well, it's a tough question. Thank you for asking. Well, actually, it was, as I think everybody in this room may know, that as a kind of an initiative, this pilot to do call an application to become a implementing agency. But the idea is that by doing that, we can have the resources which may not be available under the existing system. And actually, listening to your voices here, that I kind of realized that maybe by doing that, we can really, tap and not only resources but also ideas and network and knowledge on the ground, which may be a real value addition to the system. Based on that idea, we initiated the first batch, and 16 application was made, and the first test was, is your institution able to add value to the system? And 11 passed that test, and those 11 are now going through the accreditation center that another certification system is a kind of fiduciary. Do you have a fiduciary? Do you need a fiduciary standard? Do you need an environmental and social safeguards? So that you need to pass those things. And all 11 are now going through that process. And what we found out is actually turned out to be a very, very time-consuming exercise on the both sides. Because a lot of questions are asked, and yes, we received the questions, another round of questions. So actually, it turned out to be time-consuming, energy-consuming, effort-consuming, and we haven't really finished that, and it may take quite maybe longer than expected. Right now, the council in June decided that wait a minute, let's hold it to do over the second round, because we really don't know at that time, and even now that how many will pass out of those 11. And before that, there was a decision at the council during the GEF5 period, maybe we could do only 10, up to 10 accreditation. So without really knowing that how many of those 11 pass it and how much more time is needed. So we kind of, council is currently holding that the decision of, the holding the second round application. So that's where we are. So we will wait for the November council to discuss that issue, if they would like to open the second batch. Now, what they want to see a little bit longer and see that how many of the 11 actually that are going to pass that criteria. So that's where we are.
Nick?
Nick Sekran, I head the biodiversity program at UNDP. I think a couple of points speaking to your call for input on your 2020 vision. I mean, the first is, if we're going to achieve IG targets 2020, we're going to need to scale up action. So we need to work collectively to ensure very solid replenishment for the GEF. I think our work on biodiversity in the GEF, I can say we, being proud, we've worked with the GEF for the last 15 years, actually longer. There in Papua New Guinea, working with the GEF back when the GEF was first established. The GEF has had huge accomplishments in the space of biodiversity. So I think it's a really good place to start in terms of making the case for replenishment. In terms of what we should be doing, I think we need to stick the course. I think the GEF Secretariat, the team in the Secretariat, our friends in the Natural Resources Unit, and they're good friends too, have done a fantastic job in terms of identifying, what are the key challenges and sort of developing a GEF strategy which really is well attuned to the needs. Protected areas mainstreaming, we need to continue to do that. I hope we don't change course. On protected areas, we really need to focus on expanding protected areas now. 10 years from now, I think it's going to be very difficult to establish new protected areas because the opportunity costs of doing so are going to increase. You talked about changes in consumption and technology and the population challenges. That's only going to make the world a more complicated place post-2020, which speaks to why we really need to reach the 2020 targets as much as possible within 2020 and the need for strong replenishment. There's one thing I didn't hear at all today, and that's it's really the big draw card of the GEF, and that is it's able to generate multiple environmental benefits. It's not just in biodiversity, but you also generate benefits in water security, in avoided land degradation, in terms of climate change. And I would have thought, going forward in terms of GEF 6 and beyond, the GEF should ensure that it retains that niche. It's really important. I know that there's discussion around the creation of the GCF and about the GEF being emasculated in terms of its climate change role and that moving to the GCF. I think within the context of the GEF, to work on ecosystem-based mitigation, ecosystem-based adaptation, I can't see how you can transfer that out of the GEF to another agency when the capacity, the experience lies within this organization and its partnership. So I think maybe that would be my 2 cents worth. I think we're really excited to work with you now, as UNDP, and hopefully in time we'll have a chance to continue this discussion. Thank you.
Jeff?
One of the things that I would like to see more from the GEF is influencing government policy. So for protected areas, which as Kathy has pointed out, is really the best mechanism for conserving biodiversity. They actually are able to earn a lot of their own money, but governments don't like them to retain their revenue. This is an old story. In Selous National Park, or Selous Game Reserve in Tanzania, when to retain the World Heritage designation, the government had to agree to let them retain the revenue that they earned, because the government was actually pulling back that revenue. And if we could enable these big protected areas, and the ones that people really visit, to retain the income that they receive, and if they have surplus income, then distribute it to other protected areas that are not so well blessed. That would be a policy change that would be incredibly helpful to protected areas. Also, real unpopular with governments, and so it's going to take some political work to make this happen. But maybe if we all work together and really put pressure on governments to do this, because of the ecosystem services which are basic, many of them are public goods and should be paid for by public money.
Right.
And if the money comes in through gate fees and through other kinds of fees and is retained within the protected area system, we'll go a long way toward the long-term financing for protected areas. So what are your thoughts on how we might be able to make a vision like that happen in the real world?
I think I got the two questions, and one from Nick. Okay. One from Nick about actually his question is twofold. Why I didn't clearly mention the multi-benefit. In fact, I didn't think that I didn't mention it. It was whenever we do it right, say integrated model of, say, the river-based management, water-based management. I think that it's there, so that I actually very much value your comment, but that was not really my answer. And your question about GCF and what GEF will do going forward, I think that the important thing for the international community, particularly for Western countries, is that for them to see the seamless menu of the climate change, and from developing research and development of technologies and testing it, piloting it, proving it, data scaling up. And to what extent GCF will do, then that maybe our role will be kind of defined within that equation. But I think that so the consistency, the complementarity is very, very important in that seamless menu. But I think that your another point is so important. I mean, even if that in that seamless menu, yes, there may be a complementarity, but the role only GEF can do is this, say, ecosystem-based adaptation, the mitigation, or those kind of multi-benefit area. That's something will definitely remain in the GEF arena, so that we need to emphasize that contribution by the GEF. So that may be a very good strategy to convince donors to keep resources and continue to give us resources to the GEF. And thank you for Jeff's comment about how the GEF can be a little bit more impactful or influential on the government policy. I think it's a very, very important point, because as I mentioned, in order for us to achieve that transformational change, in many cases we need to actually change or to influence the government policy. So when we maybe decide that what kind of policy, project we should fund, this scalability and is one of the key criteria, I think. So when we kind of evaluate the current project, one surprising thing in my mind is that say 40% of the GEF projects are likely unlikely to have a systemic impact on the ground. So to me, it's a shocking thing. And there are 4 reasons why the sustainability is not there. The financial reason, the environmental safeguard reason, and the governance reason. That the one of the reasons is a policy reason. So that definitely that we have to make sure that when we design the project, we have to, to emphasize the point that if this project has a lasting impact on the ground, and if the replicability or scalability is not there, we have to think so that how we can change the government policy, or so that and how to do it. In consultation with the government. So I think your point is a very important one. That will be definitely one of the criteria. I think that going forward, when we decide which project we should do, that kind of scalability and the replicability through government policy we need to pay attention.